back to the Villa Filler podcast. I'm here, as always, with my good friend Dan Wiseman. How are you doing, Dan?
Mixed bag today, mate. Topsy-turvy affair. But no, overall, apart from the fact I'm sat here literally sticking to my bed, pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, before the game, and I think we all spoke about it on the podcast, and Villa fans on Twitter echoed this as an absolute must-win game, Dan, against one of our more winnable, if you can say that, opponents. Obviously, we didn't get the 3 points. It finished 1-1. So it's kind of, it's annoying that we didn't get the full 3 points. I feel like overall it was a much better performance. Probably our best one that we've seen since the restart.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a shame that we didn't get the result. And I think it's best to start with the beginning of the game, I guess. Villa, we were in a full-on press. It looked like proper Dean Smith football that we spoke about on the podcast last week, Dan. We were saying it's been so long since we'd seen that kind of attack on the front foot, defend on the front foot mindset from Villa.
Yeah, for sure, mate. That's the first time in as long as I can remember that we had a press. To be honest with you,
Yeah.
I was looking at the kind of Trezeguet and El Ghazi and Samuel Gold charging around. I was like, what? This has been so long since I've seen it. It was organised as well. I quite liked what I was seeing. We were putting Newcastle under some pressure. Like we had the triggers really nailed down, I thought, and I thought it was working. We definitely looked the better side in the first half. Whilst the attacks were pretty one-dimensional. It was, we were creating all of our chances via crosses, and that seems to be the only way that we can create nowadays. It was working to a large extent. Obviously, Trezeguet has that chance, which he heads into the ground, which goes over the bar. Samuel Gold has a sort of half chance where he's sandwiched in between two Newcastle defenders. And a lot of the Premier League games have gone into half-time 0-0 since the restart.
Yeah. So
it wasn't too surprising that we'd gone into half-time at 0-0, but it was. I'm not sure exactly how many it was by half-time, but around sort of 30, 35 minutes, we had 7 shots, none of them on target, which was sort of the tail of the tape, to be honest with you. But no, it was slightly disappointing that we didn't capitalise. I think we should have probably done a little bit better with one of the openings that we created. But given the performance against Chelsea, as you said, mate, it was just so much more positive, and it instilled a bit of hope in me, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think, again, it's a difficult one. And whilst we've had a bit of time to sit and stew over the performance, I think the word that comes to mind is infuriating. I think Villa, we created so many chances, and I think possibly the one that Villa will rue not making more of is the cross to Trezeguet, where he just kind of hits it on the half volley at the back post. Trezeguet, he usually manages to bundle the ball into the back of the net when he's in them positions, doesn't he? So it's a shame that he didn't manage to. I didn't think Trezeguet particularly had a great game. I think we could say the same about El Ghazi, but I think in terms of that Newcastle defence, Lascelles he's an absolute giant. They're a very big back four, even the full-backs, very tall. So playing balls in the air like that, especially when Samatta's significantly smaller, I know he can be quite potent in the air, but didn't make a lot of sense to me, Dan. I thought, the way to beat Newcastle was to get the ball to the byline and put the ball in the box and, force the Newcastle players to make a mistake, or hope that Samagol, Trez, Anwar, depending on, which side the ball's coming in from, can get on the end of a cross and convert it. It was frustrating that we didn't see any of that.
Yeah, for sure, mate. As I said, I didn't think it was by any means a complete performance. I wasn't. As I said, it made me hopeful, but I still wasn't completely satisfied, to be honest with you. I thought Newcastle were very much there for the taking. I wasn't impressed by too much that they did today. The one guy, and I have to give him a shout out, what a player they have in Alan Saint-Maximin. He was terrorising us all game, man.
Absolutely.
He was a real live wire. But apart from that, I wasn't actually too like, I was only ever concerned by Newcastle when it was ASM on the ball. apart from that, they didn't really worry me. And so I was a little bit disappointed going into half time, but still, I believe that the second half could hold positive things for us. But damn it, I don't know what it is. The amount of times we've seen good first half performances from the Villa, obviously not necessarily going in winning or anything like that, but just positive. And then I don't know what Dean says at half time, mate, but the amount of times that we just come out in the second half and we look like a completely different side, that the intent wasn't there. We resorted back to playing long ball, which really frustrates me. I think in terms of how they played the ball, I was really disappointed in the two centre-backs for the majority of the game. I think defensively, Ty put in a good challenge. He mopped up after Courtney, after he lost the ball to John Joe Chauvin. He put in a good block. And so I think in terms of how they performed, apart from the goal, obviously, which we'll get on to, I thought they sent back, but they disappointed me with the way that they play the balls. And that kind of, the amount of times you see Tyrone Mings open up his body and bend the ball with his left foot, just sort of aimlessly towards the left wing or towards Samata, was frustrating. And a little bit disappointed in that regard. But yeah, we just came out in the second half looking at a completely different team. And it's not the first time we've seen that, mate.
No, it's not. I think the main difference, as well as you highlighted, Saint-Maximin, is pace. And if you've got a player who's as quick as him, and of course as skillful as well, naturally you're going to create more chances. And I couldn't tell you the last time Villa had a genuinely pacey player up front, and that really does make the difference. I think Samagol, every time he seems to be sort of running with the ball, he always stops and slows the play down and waits for someone to run forward. And El Ghazi's the same, Trezeguet is the same. It's just a bit frustrating in that regard, because if you're running at defences, you're saying to them, look, this is your move. You make the move here. Are you going to challenge? Are you going to back off? And naturally, you're going to create chances like that. And Saint-Maximin, I wasn't as worried as you were, Dan. I mean, I certainly, scrolling through Twitter, I could see as well that you were, definitely keeping an eye on Saint-Maximin. I feel as well in the previous game as well, everyone was like, you've got to keep an eye out for Saint-Maximin. And he didn't produce as much in the last game, I don't think. Definitely did better today. But, as I say, that pace really is the difference. And it's just the intensity as well, because, a player like that, if the whole squad's down and just sort of, they need that kind of motivation, all it takes is for a player like Saint-Maximin to do a McGeady spin, drop the shoulder, go through on goal, and that lifts everyone else up. And Villa don't really have that. And as you say, going into the second half, I'd say the first sort of 20 minutes were probably Villa's worst of the game in that second half. We definitely got better after the goal, and it was a double substitution just on the drinks break, bringing Andy Carroll and, of course, Dwight Gale on, Dan.
Yeah, mate, it was infuriating me. It was the 70th minute, 68th minute, I believe. We have 5 substitutes to make in this game, and the problem was, in the nature of the starting lineup we put out, the bench was pretty weak today. And obviously, I know we're not going to be a club that I don't think we'll ever see us make 5 substitutes in a game. But we were crying out for a change. Newcastle were piling on the pressure. As you said, we hadn't started great. Newcastle were starting to knock on the door. There was a couple of chances that they'd had. And it was crying out for a substitute. And this is one of the things that infuriates me most with Dean, is that it takes until the 70th minute for him to make that substitution. And it's clear to see, I can see from home that the game is slipping away from us and that we need to change something. And we just, you speak of Saint-Maximin there, and the problem is that he played in that game like we've seen Grealish play for most of this season, in that he's the facilitator, he's the sole man. When the team's really lacking, he can pick that ball up, as you said, bang, 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 beat a few players with a few touches, wriggle himself out of a hole, win a free kick, or play someone through. And the problem is that when Jack isn't quite on song, as I don't think he's been since the restart, to be honest with you, there's been sort of little glimpses here and there of what he can do, but I don't think we've seen a 90 minutes performance that is anywhere close to the levels that Jack was before the break. And the problem is that we don't have another facilitator in the side. So we sort of resort to the long ball, which was inviting Newcastle onto us because, as you said, that monstrous back line was just winning all of those aerial battles up against poor Samata. And yeah, Dwight Gale and Andy Carroll come on, and it's just about trouble, mate. You look at that sub, and you know that those two players are going to create problems, and obviously that they linked up for the goal, but how easy we made it for him. It's an absolute catastrophe defensively. Both House and Mings are at fault. Why they're so far over on the left wing, I'll never know. Mings is trying to mark Carroll, who's playing almost as a right winger, and it slips Dwight Gale in. And you know, we've seen how many times in the Championship and whatever level, whatever team he's played at, if you give Dwight Gale that chance there, it's only one place it's ending up in there.
Absolutely, it was 2 touches as well. It's infuriating, and I noticed on Twitter as well, quite a few people over the past few days really have been really questioning Tyrone Mings, and I think Ty tends to get a bit of a free pass from Villa fans because he's a nice guy, and for everything he's done for the club last year in terms of coming in, getting us promoted. But I think, you know, what he did there was unforgivable. Bruce knew exactly what he was doing, sticking him on that wing, because you know you want to draw the centre backs out. I bet he didn't think he was going to draw Courtney House out as well, though. I mean, it was no. far too easy for him, and it's simple things. Like even if Mings was to go there, him and Courtney should have had a conversation whereby Courtney is you know further along, because as well, Esri's hardly to blame for this, but he isn't exactly in a great position that he's picked up either to kind of mop up the pieces essentially. But it was frustrating, as I say, 2 touches from Gale. But I mean, as soon as he come on, I think every Villa fan thought, "Oh my God, he's going to score!" Isn't he? Definitely some unfinished business. But I mean, after that, Dan, again, it's that same thing. Every time Villa concede, they actually put in a performance.
Yeah, it's frustrating that it took us that long to wake up, to be honest with you, mate. It's like alarm bells were ringing, and these lads were kind of like, "Shit, yeah, fuck, we're in a relegation battle."
Yeah.
And they just all suddenly woke up. And you know, of course, it took us to go a goal down before we finally brought the subs on. I think they were obviously readying the players before that, but you know, by the time that the subs had come on, the game was, you know, we were never going to score 2 goals to get back into that game. We didn't look like scoring, to be honest with you, when we were on top. You know, even in the first half, we were playing well and we were creating chances, but none of them really, you know, we didn't threaten Dubravka. He was never had to force to make a save. A goal never looks close. And so we were never going to come back and take 3 points from that game. But no, the lads looked a bit more frantic again. I want to give credit to Douglas Luiz, because he was the only. I saw him dispossess St Maximin a couple of times, and he was the only player that I think the Villa managed to do that without fouling him. And Douglas, I thought, put in a good performance.
He's trended on Twitter as well.
Yeah,
Douglas Luiz.
He deserves it, and he's been the best player that we have since the restart for sure. But yeah, we got going, and I was still quite disappointed, to be honest with you, in a lot of things. I mean, I know he ends up getting the assist for the El Mohammadi goal, which we'll discuss, but kind of he had so many free kicks and corners, and I was disappointed with the deliveries. You know, the corners weren't beating the first man. We had free kicks, which that's what Connor's on the pitch for. Is that all the goals and all his contributions come from those situations, and we were winning. You know, when you've got Jack on the pitch, you're going to get free kicks, and so we did. And I wasn't particularly, you know, still pleased. It was very much long ball, and we looked like the Steve Bruce side to a large effect. I thought, but yeah, obviously, Elmo comes on, and mate, I know it sounds stupid, but we benefited from having a right back on the pitch, because there were so many moments in the second half where Esri was getting into the final third as we were putting on the pressure, and he just looked like Bambi. And that's no disrespect to Esri. You know, he's not supposed to be in those positions.
Yeah.
And you know, it was. I can think of the moment where he got tackled by Danny Rose. He went into the Newcastle box. Danny Rose just came out, a completely fair tackle, but just it looked so easy for Danny Rose. And
he knew what he had to do.
Absolutely, you know, when you've got a 6'2" centre back coming into rocks at no real pace, it's easy for the defenders. And Elmo came on, and I thought we really benefited from having a right back playing right back.
Absolutely, and I think it's I don't know what Elmo has done to not get in the team. Like he must have bumped Dean Smith's car in the car park or something like that. Like for him not to pick him, it's crazy. I think uh, fitness may be a reason why he's not playing, but he's come on and he's scored. So if we don't see him start against Wolves, Dan, I think
We have to, mate. We have to.
Twitter is not going to be a good place, is it? But you need someone who's comfortable enough on the ball, and it's all right saying Ezri Konsa's played at right back before, but when you're 6'2" and when you have occupied a centre back position for the majority of your career, you're not going to be the most naturally gifted player on the ball. And I'm not saying by any means El Mohammadi is, but he's someone who knows how to cross a ball. That's his bread and butter. And you'd think with the amount of times Elmo's managed to find Samata and Trez throughout the season, countless times in both the league and cup, you'd think he'd have been a staple to be put at right back. I think Dean Smith starting Ezri Konsa is admitting that we are going to try and soak it up for the whole game like we did against Chelsea. And he's almost admitting defeat there, which was different to how we started out today. It really was. And I feel like if Elmo was on the pitch, even if you were going to start him and just take him off at 70 to put Ezri on, that's fine. But that's 70 more minutes of El Mohammadi crosses and a natural fullback bombing forward and just challenging Danny Rose, because it was so easy for him for the whole game. Didn't really have to deal with El Ghazi that often, nor Konsa on the overlap, which was kind of frustrating. But the one delivery that Conor Hourihane did make count, obviously, the goal by Elmo. A comedy of errors really for Newcastle, wasn't it? First of all, allowing Elmo to get a header. Second of all, was it John Joe Shelby that was blocking Dubravka, or was it John
on the line? Yeah.
No defender should be standing right in front of their goalkeeper. So I guess we got a bit fortunate there, but it kind of shows as well the fact that the two substitutes came on and made a difference for Newcastle. The two substitutes came on and made a difference for Villa. It's infuriating that it didn't happen earlier, because we could have been in for a bit of a different game, Dan.
No, bro, for sure. I mean, hey, look, I'm not Elmo. I would be the first person to say that Elmo is flawed as a player. I could give you a list as long as my arm of Premier League right backs I'd rather have than Ahmed El Mohammadi. But mate, and I said this to you. I wrote it in my my review of the Chelsea game. I said it to you in preview of the Chelsea game. As soon as is that why are it? I could tolerate it against Sheffield United, because they're a very physical team. We've seen those overlapping centre backs, and whilst obviously Sheffield United haven't been at their best, but we didn't know that at the time, and so it was going to be a physical game, and I could understand it. Chelsea, I still didn't really think Konsa should have been playing, because Elmo, as I said, is a very forward player, but he comes up clutch for us, mate. And he does. He really does. Some big assists and some big goals. And I mean, hey, you have to hand it to him. When the heat's on, he comes out the kitchen. He really does. And there's been several moments. Look at the Liverpool game at home. The Trezeguet goal that got us to Wembley. And today, he knows. He's a very experienced player. He can put a cross in. And when all that we can create from is crosses, it makes sense to have a player on the wings that can cross, because we've had so many problems. I mean, today, mate, I don't know what you feel about. Obviously, you said it earlier with Trezeguet. When we had Trezeguet and Konsa on the pitch, that right wing is effectively eliminated. Like, you're not going to get any creativity from the side, because Trezeguet, as far as I'm concerned, is deadbeat, mate. I've never really been convinced by him. He's, again, a player that I think is very reliant on confidence, complementing his performances. And when he just looks off the boil, when things aren't going his way, he just sort of drifts out further onto that right wing. You don't really see him. I don't think physically he's up to it. I don't think he's quick enough. And so when you've got a centre-back playing behind him, you're not going to get any creativity from that side. And so Elmo comes on. And as you said, mate, it's a terrible corner from Conor. It's kind of sort of coming in at waist height, coming in towards the first man. Somehow Elmo manages to get a nick on it. I couldn't believe it when he scored, mate. Unbelievable. But it's funny that's what it's taken, and hopefully Elmo does start against Wolves, mate, because we just need that. We need that right side as much as we can. And as you said, when so much of our focal, or the focal point to our attack is crosses, it makes sense to have arguably the best. I can't believe I'm saying this, but arguably the best crosser of the ball in the squad.
You're
Might I
right,
say?
though. You're absolutely right, Dan. I mean, I've almost forgotten as well what it's like to score from open play. Now, I know the Courtney Horse goal was technically from open play, but when you're putting in a ball like that, I want
Yeah.
to see like a nice fluid passing movement that leads to a goal, not a cross into the box. But I guess, it's going to be a long time until we see that. Possibly when we're in the Championship, Dan, is when we're going to see something like that. But, I mean, Wolves as well. Wolves played tonight and beat Bournemouth rather comfortably. Everyone's doing Villa a favour except for Villa, and it's so frustrating. But there's so many mixed signals that we're getting, because Dean Smith is saying that, the boys are feeling as confident as ever, which obviously he isn't going to say otherwise. And Dean Smith seems to be relatively calm in his demeanour and clearly in his decision making as well. This isn't, like a Remy Gard or a Tim Sherwood chopping and changing every week, because he still doesn't know his best team. Now, I still don't think Dean knows his best team, but he's not being irrational in the decisions he's making in terms of personnel and formation and style, I guess. It's really weird we're hearing the right things from Dean and the players afterwards as well. Douglas Luiz give a very good brief interview on Villa's website as well, which seems, a lot of people were feeling very confident about. And rightly so, but that doesn't seem to translate on the pitch really at all. And I've said we've played well and this is our best game since the restart, but the fact of the matter is, Dan, we've got 2 points out of a possible 9, where realistically I think we should have had 4.
Oh, at the very least, mate. At the very least, I don't think today was a good result. I still don't, given even how it played out. Even that way, we managed to scrape an equaliser. I still think it was poor. I think Dean has. I'm losing patience, man. I really am. I think the substitutions that we make, I don't think are in reaction to the game. I think we just see, I think we have a group of 2 or 3 players on the bench. Your Horahans, Cambers, Trezeguet or El Ghazi, whichever one is starting, and then whoever out of Samatta or Keenan isn't playing, and you just swap those. We don't make substitutions in reaction to the game. We just sort of turn to the bench and we make the same substitutions. I mean, whoever runs the Villa socials must have the easiest job in the world, mate, because you only need about 2 or 3 graphics for substitutions, because it's the same ones every week. I think in response to what I was saying earlier, mate, he's been far off the pace this season, but we've had a long old break, and I think players are going to be more off the pace than he is. We need a facilitator. We need a player that can play balls on the deck and floating off the wing. I'd like to see some more of Hotter.
Absolutely.
He had a half chance against Chelsea, but he was hungry. He came on and he found himself in that opportunity. He snapped at it, but I think that's just because the lad wants it. And I was watching the Everton game at home from earlier on in this season, and you watch Hotter slip that ball in for Wesley, splits the 2 lines, and it's a great pass. And I was just, how many players in that squad can do that? But Jack, is that it? Like, I think it is just Jack Grealish that can play that pass, and I think, as you said, when you want those fluid moves, mate, that you talk about, and the ones that are going to be taken, because, mate, if we just keep throwing crosses and long balls and set pieces up against the teams that we've got left to play, they will just eat them up all day long, mate. That's not going to trouble those kind of defences. So I think you need your facilitators. You need players on the pitch that can create chances from open play, slip balls in behind, the ones that we want to see Samatta feeding off. And I mean, hey, again, a flawed player, a player I've been very critical of this season. I think most Villa fans have, and rightly so. But Hotter offers something different. He's a little slower, but hey, mate, I think he's got to offer something more than Trezeguet. And so I want to see more than him. Why we bother taking Borja Baston 2 matches, I don't know. What is the point? Because if you want your Route 1 striker, you've got Keenan, and I feel like we turn to Basilev before we turn to Baston. I made a point in an article or in a podcast, actually, I think I wrote a while ago, that I don't think it's time to see Louis Barry anytime soon, regardless of the situation. I think throwing a 16-year-old onto the pitch and essentially saying, right, lad, try and keep Aston Villa in the Premier League is too much to ask at this stage. But just take him. I would rather see these younger lads that we've seen, Tyreek Wright, Mungo Bridge, that we've seen training with the first team during the off, than these substitutes who seem to just be there to fill up the numbers. And I think Dean's really got to look at himself and think long and hard, because I tweeted during the game that I don't think he's a fraction of the manager that was stood opposite him in the dugout today, at least. And that's so scary to say, mate, because you can find plenty of podcasts here where I would have told you the complete opposite. Yeah. But he just looks out of his depths, mate. And one thing, and I'm going to throw it back to you on this one, how are we level with survival on goal difference? I mean,
it's crazy.
We are so bad and so poor, but we're 4 goals off survival. That's it.
But the frustrating thing is we don't look like scoring.
No.
It's the games that you throw away. Like, and I say throw away, I mean, you've got to expect for Manchester City to be able to score 6 goals in a game. But that's a 5 goal difference from that game with the goal we scored. And the Norwich away game is the only thing that's really keeping us close to the pack in terms of goal difference, which is rather funny, because we've probably not played that well since that trip to Carrow Road. But I'm absolutely in agreement with you on giving Jota a go. If you've not got quick wingers, why does it make a difference if you play Jota anyway?
Yeah,
he offers something completely different. And even, and I hate to say it, John McGinn, he shouldn't be playing.
No, he's not ready, mate.
He's not ready, Dan. He really isn't. And it's like we're essentially pinning our survival hopes on a half-fit and slightly overweight John McGinn and a Jack Grealish that's tired from carrying his club for the whole season. And would it not hurt to maybe, I think Jota could play in the midfield, not even on the wing. Jota can play as a 10, I think. Jota can, or just an inside forward generally, get him close to the striker and in a position that Jack occupied on the wing maybe. But, because obviously he's not gifted with blistering pace, but someone like him who can slow the game down, can play a defence split and pass, is much more useful to me than Trezeguet, who, bundles around and doesn't really know what he's doing. It's just frustrating. And as well, I mean, you talk about some of the youth players as well. Jack Clark's one as well. We've had Jack Clark for a long time. I think he's one of the oldest in the academy. Why does it not hurt to give him 10 minutes here or there? Like, Dean,
well,
I'm just repeating what you're saying, mate, in terms of the substitutions. But you've got 5 subs, use them, and the argument was made by the clubs lower down saying we don't want it. But at the end of the day, we've got players who are good enough, or who we deem good enough in the academy. Why not give them a go? I mean, Indiana Vassilev, can you not see Indiana Vassilev on the shoulder of a defender, running in behind, from a defence splitting pass from Jota? Surely then, that's a...
It wouldn't hurt to try it, mate, at least. Yeah. Absolutely.
It's just... I don't know. I mean, I'm exhausted when I think about Villa like this, and we can rant as long as we can and do, Dan, on this podcast about the substitutions and how predictable Dean can be. But at the end of the day, we're not going to change that. And it's going to take him to trust his players and the squad, because it's a squad game. We've shown, I think, if anything, the restart has shown that Jack Grealish isn't going to keep us up on his own, because he's not really been up to par himself. Again, I'm not in any ways criticising Jack Grealish in being like, he's been crap, but I think it is unfair to pin all of our survival hopes on him. And I do really worry, Dan. We're going into a game against Wolves, a local derby in terms of distance. Definitely more one-sided. But we're coming into this game. It's a midday. Wolves have done us some big favours by beating West Ham and Bournemouth, but I can't see them easing up on us.
No, mate, that I fear could get messy. They have, mate. I look at that battle of Adama Traore up against Matt Target, and that just looks like a bloodbath to me.
He threw in the towel earlier on in the season in that game. Matt Target faking.
Yeah,
Well, we don't know if it was faked, but I would place a lot of money on the fact
yeah,
Matt Target
he didn't
faked an
fancy it.
injury.
That mate, that could get ugly. It really could. It's one of those games where this is, I think, where we're really going to feel the effects of not having fans in the ground. Because if you've got the Villa fans there and you make that derby atmosphere, it's a different game. You know, when I was looking before the break at games where we could possibly pick up some points, I was looking at that Wolves game, thinking, you know what, if we get behind the form goes out the window in a derby games. It's that old cliche. I
Yeah.
mean, and so I was looking at that. You know, if you've got a capacity Villa Park, which it would have been, you've got all the Wolves fans there. It's a hostile atmosphere. We could, take a point, something like that. We could get some kind of result, but
Yeah,
without the fans
definitely.
there, completely different. Completely different. I think it is that game. We know in virtually every aspect of the pitch that they're going to outclass us. I mean, these guys aren't they're just to make up the numbers. You know, they're pushing for Europa League, potentially even Champions League if results go their way. They're right up there. And so, a chance to come to Villa Park and play a Villa side that's as poor as ours is something they're going to absolutely relish. And it's a shame when you look at the game that we played today, and that's our easiest away trip this season, mate. And
Yeah.
we've got Wolves, we've got Man United, Arsenal. We've got we've got Liverpool next weekend,
Yeah.
and that Newcastle was our easiest away game until the end of the season. And you look at our remaining games, mate, and that trip to the Olympic Stadium on the last day of the season, that's the
There's
stuff of
so much
nightmares,
riding
mate.
on it. Yeah,
Because
there really is.
they're one of the teams that's level with us on goal difference. They're the team that's avoiding the drop at the moment. Look, Bournemouth look dire. So do West Ham. We're bad, but I don't think they're much better than we are. And so we just got to find a way to grind out points, mate. And as I said, the account tweeted earlier that it's not said and done. We're still level on goal difference. It's crazy, but the fact that Villa staying up is mathematically, and if you looked at it, having not knowing with the teams, you'd say Villa are still very much in with a shot with it being on goal difference. We've got a very hard running, but that Wolves game, you've got to see the players up for it. I want to see. We're going to see more changes, I imagine. We desperately need to see some fresh faces because we only made 2 changes today, and obviously before that it had been an unchanged 11. And you're seeing managers across the league make real wholesale changes to their 11s now. Obviously to reflect fitness. So I think Dean's got to start to do the same. And with our lack of squad depth, mate, and playing such a good team like Wolves, who, to be fair, don't exactly have a great deal of squad depth either, but they have far more quality than we do. I do fear for the boys this weekend.
And as well, I think everything points towards a Wolves winning. The fact that we start well, they don't start so well. They typically get their goals in the second half. They're going to look to bring on the likes of Pedro Neto, Adama Traore to run against tired legs. They'll happily start with a weakened, let's say 11, in comparison to what they could put out, in the hopes of beating us in the last stage of the game, which is, of course, entirely a possibility. I think for Villa to get anything from this game, the system has to change. I looked at the lineup today. I assumed it was a 4-2-3-1. It was a 4-3-3. It was probably a 4-2-1-3, if that's even a formation, because Grealish just kind of had this free role, which not a big fan of Dan, to be honest. He didn't get on the ball nearly enough as I'd have liked him to. Whether that's due to Newcastle restricting him or not, I don't know. Just wasn't a particularly great position for me, seeing Jack kind of on this, still in a left-hand side position, just kind of doing what he wants. But, for me, I think Wolves, if you look at Leicester, when we matched them with the 3 at the back, we got the result. So why not do the same with Wolves? I think you've got to pack that midfield. So, with it being like a 3-5-2 maybe. So when you're going forward, you've obviously got the fullbacks bombing on, but then defensively that 3 becomes a 5. And I'd have Louise and Nakamba holding probably if I was Dean Smith. I'm glad I'm not, but I don't really know what else to say on that on this, Dan. I can't really foresee anything other than a Wolves win. And it's getting to that point again, Dan, where we're on the podcast, and it's unfortunately for the guys listening and watching at home, it's probably a bit of a painful one, as it is for us to sit here and say these things. But
yeah, for sure.
I'm usually very optimistic, but I mean, we don't have a very good record against Wolves in recent times, other than that dismantling at Villa Park with my man Burke scoring. We've not really managed to pull up any trees in terms of performances against Wolves. So it's going to be a really tough game, Dan. And I'll throw it back to you with any final thoughts, because I don't really know what else to say on the matter, Dan, before we get this podcast wrapped up. I'm losing light as well. I should have put a light on. What am I doing? For the people watching.
I've mistakenly opted to sit in front of some natural light, and I am slowly fading, so it's a good time to round things up. But no, mate. Yeah, look, unbelievably, we're still very much in with a shot of promotion. I mean, Bournemouth don't look like they're going to pick a cup of result anytime soon. They've got a run in that's very hard. It's just as hard as ours. West Ham's it is slightly easier, so we do have to keep pace with them. But look, mate, I mean, we just got to try and keep ourselves positive. Don't. Obviously, because whilst I would worry about it becoming a toxic atmosphere if we were in the ground, it's just the same, because obviously the first thing that players are going to do when they get off the game is look at their social media accounts or whatever, and we can't just face them with an absolute shitstorm, as much as it is, to be fair. We're still very much in with a shot, and hey, if we can get the lads up for a derby this weekend, and we can put out one hell of a performance, then who knows? But as you said, I mean, most unlikely.
It is, and I mean, looking at the table, and I think Cal was on the account earlier doing those tweets, and he's not liking how he's getting absolute pelters for some of it, which he's well within his right to be optimistic. I'm trying to be optimistic, but if I just get the Premier League table up here, I genuinely think 33 points keeps you up this year.
Yeah, I think
and it will be by the skin of your teeth. But, Brighton are 15th. That's 5 points. If Villa can get 6 points, I think they're safe.
That's
I just don't think Villa can get 6 points.
I think, mate, that game against Palace at home, Palace look a really good side. But that game against Palace at home, Jesus Christ.
So they can, return the favour for that Kevin Friend VAR.
Yeah, they owe us one for sure. I mean, I can almost see Jordan Ayew scoring in that game already. But we have to pick up something in that game. There are games that, I mean, hey, Arsenal at home, they don't look very good.
We could win that, yeah.
They don't look very good at all. In both of the games. I mean, they've played two good sides, and I will say that. I mean, we can hardly judge them for falling apart against Man City, because we've done that our fair share of times this season. But they did against Brighton, and all is not well in that camp. There's rumours that they're interested in Mings, and I mean, why? I'm not sure. But hey, there are still games in which we can get points, mate, and so I think we just got to try and keep our chins up. I think this weekend is probably not one of those games, and next weekend certainly isn't, with that trip to Anfield. But the games are coming thick and fast, mate. Teams are going to start tiring out. I think that the league's going to be a different picture by the end of the season, and so we've got to try and keep those chins up.
Absolutely. I think that's a good note to end it on, Dan, while we are feeling relatively positive. So if you guys did enjoy the podcast and you're listening and watching on YouTube, hit the like button, comment your thoughts below as well. There's quite a few comments on the last podcast, so it is great to see. We do read them all, even if we don't reply. And subscribe for more. We're almost at 1,800 subscribers, which is great, Dan. I think we've gained quite a fair amount of subs this month. So we really are appreciative of your support, guys. If you are still listening, and remember, me and Dan did say we'd give away a Samata shirt if we reach 2K subscribers by the end of the season. So
Come on,
obviously,
guys. Come on.
you know, if you want to smash it, I don't think anyone will actually. You know, he could be the guy who keeps Villa up. He could be the guy who scores the goals. So yeah, me and Dan will keep our word to that if we hit that milestone.
Sure.
And if you're listening on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever your preferred podcast hosting platform is, please do subscribe and like the podcast. Notice there's a fair few on Apple and Spotify, so it's nice to see that you guys enjoy listening. You know, it is much easier to consume these things on Spotify, but you know, we started off on YouTube, so we'll always be on YouTube.
Absolutely.
But yeah, if you guys enjoyed, like, comment, subscribe, share, follow, and up the Villa.
Chester's essential to fulfilling this got potential. It's a main man, a hero. He's the main leader of the gang. Chester. 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 He's the main leader of the gang now.